Welcome to the McLaren 570S and its friends. The 570S is McLaren's entry-level car. It uses the same carbon fibre tub and 3.8 litre twin-turbo V8 as the P1 and 650S, but here detuned to 562 horsepower. Simpler suspension and no active aerodynamics keep the price down to £143,000. So McLaren, for clarity's sake, have now got this three-tier range, and it does feel a lot more sensible, if you like. You've got the 570 and the forthcoming 540, they're the sports series. Then you have the 650 and the 675, which are the Super Series. And then at the top of the range, you have the Ultimate cars, the Ultimate Series, which is the P1 and the P1 GTR. But reading up on this car, what struck me most wasn't all the technical stuff, it was the acceleration times, which are, to the 10th of a second, exactly the same as the times for the McLaren F1 20 years ago. I never thought anything would be as quick as that car, and yet now McLaren's entry-level car can do 0 to 60 in 3.2 and to 125 in 9.5. And that's astonishing. It makes it the fastest of these three, quite happily. But the advantage of the carbon tub and the other weight-saving measures that McLaren have made with this car is that you've got a lot less weight. It weighs about 150 kilos less, I think, than the Audi. And that's a big, big difference. It means that on roads like this, on tight roads, it feels very wieldy and agile. So I think it's the steering that really sets this car apart. You know exactly where you are with it all the time. You're just poking it through here. In the Porsche, you'd be managing all the weight transfer. In the McLaren, it just goes where you point it. And you'd imagine that this sort of immediacy to it would mean that it rode really poorly, but it doesn't. And I have to say, this sharp turbo it's got, it just picks up a bit quicker and makes you hold on for high revs. It'll rev to over 8,000. But it's not a spiky car, the McLaren. It has this immediacy and sharpness to the chassis. The way they've managed, the way that the turbos come in, is very, very clever indeed. This is the second generation Audi R8, now available only with the V10 engine. This particular car is the Plus, which has shorter gears and firmer suspension to go with its 602 horsepower naturally aspirated motor. The V10 is so smooth that it doesn't seem to have to work hard to give you its performance. It just sort of seems to be this very sort of progressive and undramatic engine. It's a very good-natured car, the Audi. It's very soothing. There's no sort of edges to its performance. It's just got this little bit of push understeer just to let you know that you're somewhere near the limits. It's not quite as marked as it is in the McLaren. And it feels very agile for such a big, heavy car. We always have a go at Audi's exterior design, and I'm afraid I'm going to do it again here. This one, all it looks like is it looks about 10% longer and about 10% wider. And I know the edging's a little bit sharper and that sort of thing, but to my mind, it just seems to have got a fraction more bloated. The offset of that wideness, if you like, which I think is good, is there's a lot more width to the cabin than there is in the McLaren. And while McLaren has made progress with its interior design, it's not a patch on the Audi. It's really beautifully laid out, and the sort of materials and craftsmanship on display put you in mind of sort of a German Pagani in a way. One of the things with a naturally aspirated engine, of course, is that you actually have to use the revs. And above about 5,000, this really, there we go, takes off. But below that, if you get caught out of gear, then you will get left for dead by the McLaren and the Porsche. You compare it with the McLaren, which has got such an intuitive chassis and gearbox and engine, and the whole way it works together feels really, really good. This just doesn't quite have the same cohesiveness, I don't think. The Porsche 911 Turbo gave us the concept of the everyday supercar. It's still a mighty machine, with a flat-six twin-turbo engine slung out behind the rear axle, developing 552 horsepower, and in front of it, 4 seats and four-wheel drive. So I think it's quite easy sometimes to take the 911 Turbo for granted because you see them around a lot. It's relatively tall, it looks a bit sort of more everyday than the others. And yet you get it on a good road and really it's still properly got the guts to get itself down a road really fast and quite thrillingly. You just sort of develop this technique with it where you dive it in on the brakes a bit and just build up the power and off it goes. It's all about managing the turbos. The turbos absolutely dominate the Porsche experience. But it's such an easy car to live with, the Porsche. You've got these lovely upright A-pillars and this big panoramic windscreen. You sit a bit higher in it. It feels very manageable. You're very comfortable, and all the switchgears sort of familiar German engineering and quality. But it hasn't got the same immediacy of the chassis because it weighs that bit more as the McLaren, and it doesn't have the same sort of steering response. The McLaren steering is a bit of a highlight actually, but I think it's got the measure of the R8, I really do. The 570S isn't as easygoing as its rivals, but it's happy enough pootling about, and when you do want to put the hammer down, it'll reward and excite in a way that neither rival can match. It's our number one.